Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. This is your host, Cristi Habermann. I do believe today is our 100th episode of Grieving Insomniacs. I started this podcast 2 years ago because I wanted to talk about the loss of my son. The societal expectations that I just forget about it and move on, the family expectations that I just forget about it and move on, were just too much for me. And so I wanted to start a podcast. I wanted to be able to talk about the loss of my son without shame or embarrassment or crying. And I got to tell you, it's one of the best things I did. 2 years later, we are on the 100th episode. If you are listening to this for the first time, please like and subscribe. I would appreciate it. I'm trying to get my listenership up on both YouTube and Instagram, and I hope there's something that I talk about that you find value in. If you have show ideas or just have comments about my podcast, reach out to me on Instagram at Grieving Insomniacs. I do have a YouTube channel now called Grieving Insomniacs. I am on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and anywhere else that you can listen to podcasts. Today, I want to talk about basically our physical body. That doesn't take into account our physical body. And when we lost our children, it very much impacted our physical body. And I've read a couple other books where people were pretty honest about what happened to them when they found out their children died. I know for me that I experienced a blackout. My brain just shut off. It was just gone. It was one of the scariest things I had happened to me when my son died, because I honestly thought that I was going crazy, that only crazy people have that happen to them. It's 13 years later, so I still don't have that belief system. I do have a hard time talking about it because there's still some point of embarrassment to talk about what happened when I found out my son died. However, I think it's something really important to talk about because many people say, I don't know what I would do if I was in your shoes. I don't know how I would react. I don't know how I would cope with things. Well, the reality of the matter is that we didn't have any choice. You have to keep going on, and everybody has their different reasons about why they're going on. I had a husband, I had a living child still, I had grandchildren, I had to keep going on. But my health took a serious toll. I have a couple of podcast episodes about what happened when I go to the doctor, what happens when you get gaslit by your medical providers. And I really believe it's because the medical providers, even counselors, don't understand the connection between the body and your emotions. They're starting to. It's starting to become more mainstream, but back when I first lost Christopher, it was not. Somatic therapy is all about teaching your body and yourself how to manage the emotions. There's a couple of theories in psychology that apply here. One of the theories comes from trauma therapy, and it's called parts therapy. So there's this belief in parts therapy that when you experience a major tragedy, parts of yourself break off, parts of your personality. But there's also the physical reactions that still live within your body. And so in parts therapy, it talks about how to heal the individual parts. So try to understand that in the physical body, right? So I'm going to use myself as an example. I have actually several chronic illnesses, but I believe that my health took a serious turn after my son died. And in fact, writing this podcast and then talking about this somatic therapies, I realized just how devastating that loss was to me in my physical health. That's what we're talking about here, is physical health. There's another school of thought that also comes from the Buddhist tradition about the meridians. I'm a mom. I carried my son inside my body. His blood mingled with my blood. He could feel my thoughts. I could feel him moving around in the belly. He was a part of me. He shares my DNA. I swear that when my son died, I felt the physical loss of him, that I felt him die. Now, I've always been a somatic person, like very much aware of my body and how it operates in the world. It's just one of those things about me. There may be other people that didn't have that same experience, but I guarantee you that there's parts of your body that remember that loss extensively. So it was really a struggle after Christopher died, trying to understand why physically I wasn't feeling good and how I was going to get better. So I tried talk therapy, and that helped with the cognitive things that I was struggling with. An example of a cognitive belief that I struggled with is I believed it was my fault. So cognitive behavioral therapy would be showing me how incorrect that belief was, that I was not at fault. I did a lot of talk therapy, but I really wasn't getting to the place that I wanted to be at. Then I started getting into the somatic techniques, meditation, body scanning. I was also very interested in creating a relationship with Christopher that existed through energy, through the way we interacted with each other, because the belief that he was no more was intolerable to me. I became very interested in meditation, in these alternative theories, and they, over the years, have helped me work on my grief with Christopher. I also, just as an example, I have a tattoo on my back. Yes, I'm one of those people. I have lots of tattoos. But I didn't get my first tattoo until I was 40. I have a tattoo in my back. It says Christopher has Kelso, which was his nickname, in parentheses, and angel wings. When I feel like Christopher is around me, and it happens often when I'm talking on the podcast, and my body starts itching in that particular area, and this has been for years, I took that as a sign that Christopher was communicating with me. So that's an example of how I use my body somatically. I'm also a therapist. When someone comes into my office and I'm visiting with them and I have a strong physical sensation, I will ask the client about, do you have problems in this particular area? So the one that I remember the most was a client that had come to my office and was riding her bike. She sits on my couch and says, I need a minute. I was like, okay, you can have a minute. And then my heart just starts racing. It's just doom, doom. Like, it feels like it's like coming out of my chest. And so I said to this person, I said, how come my heart is beating so much? And then that person says to me, I have heart problems and I was riding my bike. And so I'm having a hard time breathing. Okay. As soon as she told me that, my heart stops racing. And so it's important, as a therapist, to understand when I have these physical emotions, or physical feelings, I guess they'd be called, whether or not they belong to me or they belong to the client. I've trained myself to do this. And it's a very valuable tool. I've gotten away from it a little bit since Chris died because it's very painful to be in my body because I have to experience all my own emotions surrounding the death of my son. But this podcast very much helped. All right. So let's talk about the somatic techniques for grief. So the first thing we need to understand, and those of you that have lost a child or a loved one, especially unexpectedly, know that there is full body emotional response to loss. And I asked a question on Spotify, but it's pretty narrow. Maybe I'll ask it on YouTube, but I probably should ask it on Instagram. Did anybody listening have the kind of blackout like I did? Like, I blacked out, screaming, yelling, like it was a full-on out of control reaction. And I am a person that needs to be in control. So it was so scary, but it's also very overwhelming. And I can't even imagine how overwhelming it is for somebody that is not a therapist. Or maybe it's more acceptable when you're not a therapist because you don't have those worries about whether or not you're crazy. But I really worried about it. Many times people will seek out therapists, and therapists do talking therapies, they do emotional processing, but I don't know too many that do the somatic route. What the somatic route does is focus on the body, and it helps you release stored tension, reconnect with your physical self, and find a sense of grounding amidst the turmoil of grief. There's another thing that I've been seeing, especially on Instagram, that kind of bothering me in a way, and this is only coming from, this is the counselor, grieving mom kind of idea, is there's such a focus on moving past and moving into feeling better. And there's various people, all kinds of different people out there. So this isn't directed at any one person, but there's people out there that are selling themselves as grief coaches or things like that are going to show you the way out of the pain and suffering that you're going through because you lost a child. Just want to put this disclaimer out there that there's only one way through it, and that one way through it is through it. But because we're all individual and we're all different, what works for one person is not necessarily going to work for someone else. Before you put out that money, and that's what they're going to charge you, is money to find the way, I would suggest you go into yourself and get to know yourself first so that you can understand what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You may be asking, how do I know? Like, how do I know that I need to be doing somatic processing? Think about the last time you got a grief wave. So a grief wave is, why is it so hard for me to say that word? A grief wave is when the emotion just rolls over you and you just start crying. For me, because it's been 13 years and I swear I have no tears left, I don't cry as much as I just feel it like coming up from my feet. So when you're in the grocery store and you look at a cereal and you just start crying because that's the one your child ate, where does that live in your body? Where is that feeling coming from? Your heart, your stomach, your head? That's what you need to know for your somatic processing, is where does that feeling live? If you develop chronic illnesses after your children died, pay attention to those. We'll go into that a little bit more as we go through this episode, but think about what parts of your body are impacted by your child loss. I got blood pressure right away after my son died. Like, bam, within months. I think it was 2 months, I had high blood pressure. I had a genetic disposition for high blood pressure, but the trauma of it definitely put me over it. And I tried to manage it through diet, till my doctor, after a couple of months, said, yeah, no, this isn't working. And I'm sure it's because of the loss of Christopher. We shared blood when he was born. That was my physical reaction to that. Unfortunately for me, because I have a genetic predisposition, there is no amount of somatic therapy that's going to get rid of that. It's just the way it is. But those are the kinds of things, as we go through this podcast, you need to think about for yourself. One of my triggers for my grief when Christopher first died was chest pain. My heart hurt. My heart hurt for a long time. And I went to the doctor and I told him, my heart hurts. My son just died and my heart hurts. Did they talk to me about it? No. He completely ignored the question. Later, I found out that there is some kind of heart problem that comes right after grief. Do we know if I had it? Don't know. Because they ignored me. But it's one of the reasons why I developed this podcast, and it's one of the reasons why I want to talk about it, is because I don't want other people to go through what I went through. I want to provide tools that you can use, and if you don't like them, you can toss them out. And if you do like them, use them the way you need to use them for the issues that you need to use them. What I find, being a grief therapist, before I close my counseling practice, is as a mom, there are some really shameful thoughts that I had about Christopher dying that I wouldn't share with anyone, and I still don't share with anyone. And I wouldn't have shared with a therapist out of fear that they would think less of me, or that I would be embarrassed to say. A common one is drinking. I had a lot of clients tell me how much they were drinking, even though I knew they were drinking. I could tell. So it's just things like that. So there are some things as grieving moms we're going to keep to ourselves, whether it's societal pressure, whether it's family pressure, whether it's just plain embarrassment. We're going to keep those things to ourselves. But with techniques like this, you can work through those things on your own or become more confident, so that if you are working with a professional and you have a good relationship, you can share the information that is most embarrassing to you or not. It's really up to you. The first thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to somatic techniques is Eastern medicine. Eastern medicine is much more focused on body awareness than Western medicine. Western medicine is very much what we call the medical model in the counseling field. So those medical model therapists are going to turn to medication. They're going to turn to cognitive behavioral therapies. Now, there's nothing wrong with cognitive behavioral therapies, but it's not going to address the spiritual, physical parts of the grief. And so we need to do a little bit of education about which Eastern medicines that we are going to use. And instead of focusing like on the particular cultures, I just want you to think of it as energy. I'm sure that when you walk into a room, you can tell the energy of the room. And if you don't, you're lucky. But I can walk into a room and I can feel who's angry. I can look at that person and see who's angry. I can feel who's sad. Who they're angry at just by watching. It's just one of the side effects of my profession. But I most definitely can do it. I became very interested in energy work before I became a therapist. Well, right about the same time. As we discuss these things, I'll tell you which traditions they came from, but you don't have to believe in the tradition in order to understand how energy works. The idea is that we all have an energy field. We're all connected through energy. And when we pass over into another life, that energy goes into the other life. The chakra system comes out of the Buddhist philosophy that there is a belief that the body has 7 chakra centers in the body, and we're going to go over each one. Now, Carolyn Myss, she died many years ago. Man, it's probably 10 years ago. But I had a book, and I'm going to link it in the description, called Anatomy of the Spirit. And I read this at the very beginning of my counseling career. So we're talking, 2001, 24 years ago. It's when I bought this book and I read this book. I mean, it was very impactful. The 7 chakra centers in the body made sense to me. If you're into color therapy, there are colors associated with the 7 chakras. If you're working on a particular chakra, you can do some color therapy, which is just imagining color going into that particular chakra. If you're interested in that, there's information all over the internet. There's crystals that are connected to the chakras. There's all kinds of information out there on how to heal your chakras beyond what I'm talking about here. The biggest thing that I took away from Carolyn Myss's book is that the chakras connect us to our emotional areas we need to work on, and that manifests as illness. The way that I would use this, I just memorized it. And when someone came into my office, and you always do a medical questionnaire, they'd tell you what medical problems they had. Then I would be like, oh, that's connected to this chakra. So let's check into whether they have any of these emotional or mental issues. A lot of times it connected. I was very surprised. I found this in my counseling practice and in my own life very helpful. There are 7 chakras. I will try to put on my Instagram different diagrams so you can see what I'm talking about and the different types of therapy. The root chakra. So the root chakra connects you basically to your ancestors. It also stabilizes you. It's at the base of the spine. Think about when you are standing, and if you've ever had like a lower back and how unsteady you are, that's your root chakra. If you have a strong root chakra, you're going to have a sense of security and stability, even emotionally. The body parts associated with the root chakra, and this is all according to Carolyn Myss. This is not my original thoughts. I'm just telling you about them because I find them helpful when I'm doing my own work and trying to utilize somatic therapies. The illness associated with the root chakra are chronic low back pain, sciatica, varicose veins, depression, and your immune-related disorders. The mental and emotional issues associated with the root chakra is physical family, group safety, security, ability to provide for life's necessities, standing up for yourself, feeling at home, and feeling like the world is a safe and just place. I'm just going to use myself as an example. I don't want to use anyone else. I don't have a strong connection to my extended family or even my ancestors. I'm kind of like a little mutt in the world and pretty isolated as far as having support like from cousins or family, and it's always been this way. Doesn't have anything to do with Cristi, and it's just that's how our family was. I have issues with stability. I don't have a strong low back. It is significantly worse after Christopher died. So the root chakra is one area that I really got to work on. And I work on it at various times, and then I go backwards, and I'm not very good at consistency. Your sacral chakra, and that's just below your navel. So think your pelvis, that particular area. Carolyn misstates that this is the energy center for the sexual organs, large intestine, the lower back that connects to your pelvis, your appendix, and your bladder and your hip. You have hip problems, you have bladder problems, you want to focus on your sacral chakra. If you're feeling the need to be creative, that comes from art, I guess this podcast, writing, all of that is connected to your sacral chakra because that's where the energy, the urge to create comes from. The chronic illnesses associated with this chakra are chronic lower back pain, OBGYN problems, pelvic and low back pain, sexual potency, and urinary problems. Mental and emotional issues associated with this chakra are blame and guilt, money and sex, power and control, creativity, ethics and honor in relationships. I really struggle with ethics. I'm an ethical person. I work in a job that makes me work with other people. They don't always have the same ethics as I do. And that causes a significant amount of stress in my sacral chakra. The solar plexus chakra, think about your stomach. This is the area above the belly button and rib cage, that particular area. This represents our self-esteem and our confidence. One of the tools that I use in my therapy, if I believe that they're empathic and they struggle somewhat with absorbing the emotions of others, what I ask them to do is cover up the solar plexus chakra, which is if you're sitting in a meeting, put your purse on your lap, put your notebook on your lap, something to block that area. If you walk out of the meeting and there's no emotions, especially if they're particularly difficult meetings, like you're not stressed, you feel comfortable in your own body, you know that when you don't cover up your solar plexus chakra, that you're absorbing the emotions of other people. And do these kind of different techniques that I'm talking to you about so that you can start to learn where you store most of your energy. I am very much a solar plexus person. A lot of my connecting with other people comes from that particular area of the body. For me, the organs associated with the solar plexus is, of course, the abdomen, the stomach, your upper intestines, liver, gallbladder, kidney, pancreas, adrenal glands, spleen, and middle spine. Think of from your lower back to right below on me, it would be my breast line. That is the middle spine. The chronic illnesses associated with this solar plexus is arthritis, gastro or duodenal ulcers, colon intestinal problems, pancreatitis, diabetes, indigestion, chronic or acute, anorexia or bulimia, liver dysfunction, hepatitis, and adrenal dysfunction. The mental and emotional issues surrounding the solar plexus chakra is trust, fear, intimidation, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-respect, care of oneself and others, responsibility for making decisions, sensitivity to criticism, and personal honor. The heart chakra, that is located in the center of your chest. When I say that my heart hurt, that's where my pain was, and a little bit over to the left side. The organs associated with the heart chakra are the circulatory system, lungs, shoulders, and arms, ribs, breast, diaphragm, and thymus gland. Chronic illnesses associated with the heart chakra are congestive heart failure, heart attack, mitral valve prolapse, asthma, allergy, breast cancer, lung cancer, bronchial pneumonia, upper and back and shoulder difficulties. The mental and emotional issues associated with the heart chakra are love and hatred. See how those two are combined? That's quite interesting. Resentment and bitterness, grief and anger, self-centeredness, loneliness, commitment, forgiveness, compassion, hope, and trust. A little bit on the heart chakra. Where I commonly see people having difficulties with their grief is they develop some kind of lung disorder. And I just wanted to throw that out there that if you're grieving, keep an eye on your lungs, just because Emotionally, you may feel like you can't breathe, but just make sure that there isn't a physical reason why you can't breathe. These are connected. I firmly believe that our physical body is connected to our emotional, is connected to the illnesses. Your throat chakra, it's right in the middle of your throat. And that's our communication, verbal communication. The organs associated with the throat chakra are the throat, the thyroid, the trachea, neck vertebrae, mouth, teeth and gums, esophagus, parathyroid, and hypothalamus. The chronic illnesses associated with the throat chakra are raspy throat, chronic sore throat, mouth ulcers, gum difficulties, TMJ problems, scoliosis, laryngitis, swollen glands, and thyroid problems. The emotional and mental issues associated with the throat are choice and strength of will, personal expression, following one's dream, using personal power to create, addiction, judgment and criticism, faith and knowledge, and capacity to make decisions. The third eye. The third eye is located between the eyes, and that supports intuition and imagination. Myth states that the organs associated with the third eye are brain tumor, hemorrhage, stroke, neurological disturbances, and full spinal difficulties. The emotional and mental issues associated with the third chakra are self-evaluation, truth, feelings of adequacy, openness to the ideas of others, ability to learn from experience, and emotional IQ. The crown chakra, that's the one that's at the very top of the head. That's often considered our spiritual center. And that represents our life purpose and our spiritual connections. The organs associated with the crown chakra are the muscular system, the skeletal system, and the skin. The chronic illnesses associated with the crown chakra are energetic disorders. One of those would be like chronic fatigue. Chronic exhaustion, not associated with a physical disorder. That would be like the exhaustion that accompanies depression. Light sensitivity, sound, and other environmentals extreme. I will tell you that in the last year or so, I have developed, maybe the last couple of years, I have developed some sensitivities to light and sound. And it's surprising what an impact it does on my brain. And I'm not sure why that is. I work in an isolated area. I don't know if it's because I'm not around big crowds. My body hasn't adjusted to being around a lot of noise, but the light sensitivities and sound sensitivities are a big deal to me. I also have vertigo. Emotional and mental issues associated with this chakra is the ability to trust life, values, ethics and courage, humanitarianism, selflessness, ability to see the larger pattern, faith and inspiration spiritually, and devotion. And I know in my own grief journey, my crown chakra was impacted when my son died because I lost all trust. I'll trust in the world. I'll trust in my spiritual faith. I'll trust in everything. And it shows up everywhere. You would think that would not be such a big deal, but it shows up everywhere. Leads me almost to a sense of paranoia because I'm always waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I am positive that that's associated with my grief, because I learned quickly that the world was not a safe place. And most people walk around with this belief that the world is a safe place, because I shouldn't say nothing bad has happened to them, but nothing to the extent of losing a child has happened to them. Maybe other things have happened to them, but I believe the majority of people don't walk around thinking that the world is an untrusting place. Somatic grief therapy is based on the premise that our body holds on to emotions and experiences, and those manifest into physical discomfort or tension. We engage with our bodies so that we can process this grief in a more holistic way. This approach recognizes the interplay between the mind and body, aiming to release the physical manifestations of grief and restore a sense of balance. Mindful breathing. I was going to demonstrate it like you can see me, but most people breathe from the chest. If you can feel your chest go up and down, that increases anxiety, that increases depression. It makes you more anxious. When you are doing mindful breathing, you need to put your hand on your stomach and move your hand up and down. Then you're doing mindful breathing because you're forcing the air all the way down into your stomach and then forcing it back up. If you can imagine the energy, you bring the energy in through your mouth, you push it down into the abdomen, and then it moves back up. You breathe down to 1, 2, and breathe up 3, 4, and not fast. Because if you go fast, then you're increasing the anxiousness. So you need to slow it down. And then you focus on slowing it down. You're aware of nothing but your breathing. Mindful breathing can help reduce anxiety, lower stress levels, and brings a sense of present to the moment. It allows you to practice the pause. The pause is that you stop, count to 10, and then react. It creates a space for reflection and healing. Progressive muscle relaxation. Most people aren't aware of their bodies unless you teach them. What progressive muscle relaxation is starting at your feet. Tense your feet, let loose. Tense your feet, let loose. And then you move up the body. I can't remember what the back of your legs are called. It's not the thighs, that's too soon. Anyway, you tighten that, release it. Then you move up your knees, tighten your knees, release the knees, all the way up physically through your body. And pay attention, where is the tightness in your body? And you may not believe in the Buddhist style of thought, but if you're doing the progressive muscle relaxation and you notice that your stomach is tight or the muscles in your abdomen are tight, ask yourself, am I struggling with any of the issues that Carolyn Myss talked about in her book? If so, you can use these tools to relax those muscles and release that emotion. In the long run, you will be healthier because stored up emotion becomes disease. Stored up energy, which is emotion, creates disease. You do that physical, tighten, let go, tighten, let go. Oh, calves. It's written right here in my show notes. So if you move up the body, feet, calves, thighs, abdomen, chest, arms, face, tensing and releasing each muscle group. I like to go, and I teach it when I'm working with people, to go back down, right? So you go all the way up, and I'm one of those people that likes patterns. So then I work myself down, then go down the opposite way. Start at the face, the shoulders. If you could see me, I'm moving my shoulders back and forth. Moving to the chest, tighten, release, and all the way down. You'll feel significantly relaxed when you get to the bottom. Once you identify where your body's carrying your stress, focusing on those particular areas and those emotional issues that resonate with me. What resonate means I feel like it's right. You say something and I feel like it's right. Yep, that's true for me. That's what's called resonate. In this progressive relaxation technique, even if I was working with you as a therapist and I knew you well, if you told me this is what I'm experiencing, I would believe you because you are the person experiencing it. And then grounding exercises. I like to do grounding exercises in the shower, when I get up in the morning, at home. I actually just bought a grounding mat. I'm working on using that. What grounding exercises are is ensuring that your mind is within your body. So what happens is that people disassociate. What that means is that there's a physical body, but that internal sense of who they are is somewhere else, outside their body. What grounding does is bring what's outside of the body back into the body. And I will see it happen in my therapy sessions, and I watch people's eyes, and I can tell when they're disassociated. I ask them, do you feel your feet on the floor? Yes, I feel my feet. Do you feel your calves? Yes, I feel my calves. And then we breathe it, do the deep breathing a couple of times. And then we move up through the physical body, but where the intent is grounding into the ground. I also tell people that I work with is that imagine roots growing from your feet into the ground. But also if you're laying down on a bed, imagine that along your back, you have roots going into the ground. I also do an exercise called a mind dump, especially when I'm anxious and upset and I have no control over how to fix it. I will imagine a hose connected to my brain and I will just dump it back into the earth because the earth transmutes the energy back into positive. I give it back to the earth and the earth will give it back into the universe as cleansed energy. The good thing about grounding exercises is you can do them wherever. If you're sitting in a meeting and you feel a grief grief waves start to hit you, man, I have a hard time with that word, or set of words. If you feel it hit you, you can cover up your solar plexus if you're one of those people that absorbs energy. But you also can do a grounding exercise and no one will even know, because it'll ground you back into your body. And that is critically important. In our society today, there's like this focus on what we call emoting, which is the emotion coming out. I had this experience not that long ago with a group of people that they told me, well, I have such and such mental health disorder, therefore I can't do that. Yeah, you can. This emphasis that every emotion has to be expressed verbally is really harming our society, because it doesn't. You can do so many things with your mind. And like I said, it goes back to embarrassment. It goes back to being in the workplace, having to have a job, having to support our families, at the same time trying to work with our grief. We can't do that in public. And this younger generation has a hard time understanding that. But you can use grounding techniques anywhere and just dump it out. Say, out of my brain. Movement and dance are powerful tools for expressing and processing grief. Not everyone is comfortable with that, but the physical activity part of that is probably the important part, because that allows you to release pent-up energy and emotions. You can feel like cathartic. Now, for those that say, I can't do meditation, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, you can do walking meditations. Walking meditation is you just focus on the world around you so your thoughts are clear. There's all kinds of ways to do different things to meet your needs. You just have to be creative about it, because it's all about what's comfortable for you. Body scanning. This is one of my favorites that I do on a regular basis. I will do a scan of my body, and I call it feeling some kind of way, because sometimes I have these feelings and I can't really name them, so I call them, I'm feeling some kind of way. When I'm feeling some kind of way, I do a body scan. What's going on in my head, what's going on in my shoulders, in my stomach, my legs. What am I feeling or not feeling? It's probably more likely not feeling. And as I do the body scan, when I get to the particular part of my body that's calling for attention, so to speak, I'll have some insight about what I need to do. Body scanning is just a tool to start to learn to recognize yourself. It also develops a deeper connection with yourself. I have a chronic illness called mast cell activation disorder, which causes for me coughing, runny nose, brain fatigue, physical pain sometimes, and itchy skin. I can't tell when I'm sick with a virus or with something else like strep throat or something like that. Like, I can't tell. I have to use the body scanning technique quite often in those cases. The way that it looks like for me is I can't stay home every time I feel sick. I mean, some people can, I can't. I'd be staying home every day, especially on top of the cancer I already got. So I do this body scanning, and then I guess I do what's called a life scan too. So I do a body scan. Why don't I feel good? What did I do that makes me not feel good? Dreams impact me not feeling good. If I'm body scanning and be like, oh yeah, I had that dream about this particular issue. Oh, that's right. Or I ate this particular food. I might not have been as careful as I was supposed to do, or I used this particular lotion, or I did this particular thing. So I use this body scanning technique a lot to help me determine whether I can go to work or not. It's a valuable tool. I highly recommend that you use it. Yoga. Yoga is also important for getting you connected with your body. Yoga is another one of those things I can't do because I have vertigo. But I went through the different poses that's connected to each chakra, that you could try them out, because the idea is to release the emotion. I'm not saying go into a yoga studio, and if you do, good for you, but just do a simple Google search and try these different poses to see if it will help you access whatever emotion you're trying to relieve. When your root chakra, it's mountain pose, yogi squat, and child's pose. For the sacral chakra, that is, think of creative centers, Think of sexual issues that you might be having. Goddess pose, pigeon pose, and reverse warrior pose. Solar plexus in your belly, box pose, plank pose, cobra pose. In your heart. And I liked these animals associated with these chakras because you might explore what the totem is for cobra pose. Like, I wrap all of this stuff all together. So there's camel pose, there's bridge pose, and there's wild thing pose. What do we know about camels? Well, they store water in both their humps. How can that apply to our heart chakra? It'll change depending on the people. For your throat, I was really surprised that cat-cow was associated with the throat. I would have seen that more as solar plexus, but nope. The neck rolls, you roll your neck, and shoulder stand. The third eye, dolphin. So dolphins are actually often associated with spirituality. Fish pose and child pose. And I'm not surprised about that either, because children are so innocent and spiritual when they're first born. And then the crown, I really love this. The dragonfly pose, the tree pose, and the child pose. So if you're one of those people that looks for signs, and I do, so the dragonfly is one that, especially there's this blue dragonfly that comes around my house. I just take that as a sign from Christopher, but I find it so interesting that that is the one that's associated with our spiritual and faith-based chakras. I wouldn't have really have guessed that. And the last thing I want to say is the importance of meditation. Meditation really should have been first because it all starts with meditation, but in some somatic practices, you have to be able to calm the mind in order to listen to the body. That means you got to turn out all that outside stimuli. Any somatic practice should include meditation. And I hear people all the time say, I can't meditate. Meditation is a skill like anything else, and you need to practice. One of the ways to help when it comes to meditation is when the thoughts impede on your meditation, you let them fly away. You see them as birds. Fly away. I should be doing laundry instead of sitting here with my feet up. Let that thought fly away. You also got to be careful because insights come to you when you're meditating. A way to determine if it is an insight or a random thought is if it rings true for you. Random thought is more like my to-do list. If I'm laying there creating a list about where I'm going to go tomorrow and the errands I need to run, that is not meditation. However, if I'm laying there and I get this thought that I need to take up drawing again. I used to do portraits. I really like them. That's a sign I need to be more creative in my life. Or if I have this thought that I'm not being very honest in my communication, I need to work on that. An insight is going to lead you to better healing. It's not going to be a checklist of things you need to do tomorrow. And the insights are what you're looking for. I think what scares people away from meditation is when they slow down and all those feelings come up. All those feelings they didn't want to experience. So they all come to the forefront. You're listening, pay attention. And they're all competing for you to feel them. Just feel them. You may cry, you may get angry, you may have images run through your brain, but it's the same as the thought. Just let it flow away. Flow away. Don't act on it. Just let it flow away. And if you only can meditate for 3 minutes at a time at first, that's good enough. Just keep trying to build your time. Just like if you were trying to start walking and you could only do 3 blocks the first time, but 10 days from now, you're able to do a mile. It's the same idea. And the last thing about the somatic therapy is only you can decide if that is working for you, and not to be scared of the emotions that arise by working on those particular issues. You may have an outburst of emotion about crying, sadness, anger. Ride the emotion to the end. If you shut it down, your body is going to store it again, and you're going to have to go through the process again. And your body's also going to learn then that your mind, Cristi, is not safe. So part of it is being able to be the trusting person that your body needs to experience it. Once you've released the emotion, let's say you were working on solar plexus is a big one for me. I have self-esteem and self-confidence issues for many reasons. When I work in those areas, I cry and I have these memories that come up, and it's very difficult. And also one of the most difficult emotions I have that I myself have a hard time processing is embarrassment. I will do anything to avoid embarrassment, anything, but you have to learn how to work with it. You redo the body scan. You had this outflowing of emotion. Redo the body scan. Okay, I've done my meditation, I did my grounding, whatever exercise that you've done, do your body scan again. How do I feel? Is there tension somewhere in my body I need to pay attention to? Do I need to tense it and release it until it feels better? That'll tell you if it's working. You will be very tired after somatic work and possibly emotional. So now this next thing I'm going to say comes out of EMDR therapy. But after you do EMDR and release those emotions, and I believe that it applies here also, it takes 48 hours for your body to completely process that emotion out. You're going to be emotional. That would not be the time to engage in activities that will make you more emotional. So as an example, I do not do EMDR therapy at the place that I work now because it's not a safe place. It is like a dorm setting. There's no alone time, no time to cry. None of those things exist. If you don't have time to take the time out to work on it, you might wait till the weekend. Do it on Saturday morning so that when you go back to work, especially if you have a stressful place that can kind of trigger you, that most of the emotional processing will be gone. Try to keep that in mind. It takes 48 hours, 2 days. Don't force yourself too fast to complete the work. I'm just now starting to realize this myself on my 13th year of going through my grief, that grief is like an onion. We peel one layer and we get to a deeper part. Counseling's like this too. We call it peeling the onion. You do the first part, do the second part, and you keep doing it till the end of time. And I just want you to think about this, is that we have the rest of our lives to cope with the loss of our loved ones. It's not going to go fast. I'm sorry. I know there's people out there going to these grief coaches and these grief people trying to find the answer to feeling better. There is no quick fix to this, none. If you're paying someone and you're not getting to the resolution, that means there just isn't one. So you have the rest of your life to cope with it. In conclusion, wow, we've gone a long time today. Grief is a complex, multifaceted experience that affects the mind, body, and the soul. These techniques offer a path for healing, allowing you to process your grief that's stored in your body. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, like we covered a lot of different things, I hope that you can see the benefits of these somatic therapies to help you get to a place where you can sleep at night, where you can manage your triggers of your grief, that you can get to know yourself a little bit better. If you have any questions, reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook. I'm not as active on my Facebook. Well, I guess I am. YouTube. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. I'm going to try to put some meditations in my YouTube recommended music section, some meditations. I'll try to put in some links about crystals that you can use to work with each chakra. and anything else I can think of that might be helpful for this. So thank you for listening. This is Cristi Habermann from Grieving Insomniacs. Thanks for listening.